Konami's efforts to win back the shooting game market on arcades began the development of two of the most prolific franchises in the genre. The first to come out was a game that took Xevious' concept and evolved it, adding story elements and two-player simultaneous co-op. This game was Twinbee. Pioneer of the shoot 'em up variant, the cute 'em up genre, which features the gameplay and challenge of shmups but in a cute or kawaii world filled with whimsical aesthetics. Twinbee takes place in Donburi Island, which gets invaded by the evil King Spice and his 4 generals. To fight and defeat King Spice's army, a scientist named Dr. Cinnamon created 2 sentient airship fighters, Twinbee and Winbee, piloted by his son and daughter, Anamon and Donamon respectively. The game features a similar gameplay to Namco's Xevious, with the ability to shoot down flying enemies and drop bombs to the ground-level turrets. This is why many players at first dismissed this game as a Xevious clone. But the main mechanic that differentiates Twinbee is the ability to power up the player's ship by shooting the bells that are hidden in clouds until they change color. Each colored bell gives the player a different power-up. The silver bell equips the ship with the twin shot. The blue bell is a speed-up. For each blue bell the ship speeds up a level, but getting too many can turn Twinbee in a twitchy mess. The green bell, which appears during single player only, gives Twinbee 3 shadow ships that multiply the player's attacks. And finally, the red bell gives the player a shield. Green and red bell's powers can't be combined, unless you make them appear at the same time. But this isn't advisable, since the aggressiveness of enemies becomes unbearable in later stages. Other power-ups appear after defeating ground enemies, such as a bell that holds the triple shot, in single player only. In the arcade version, getting the bell when you already have the triple shot summons a baseball that bounces around the level for a while, killing enemies. And lastly, the star that clears the screen from enemy units and their bullets. We will take a look at the first loop of the arcade version and 2 of the most played ports of the game, the Famicom version and the MSX version, played on the Sega Saturn, where it was released as part of the Konami MSX Antiques collection. Instead of watching all 3 versions at the same time, we will first watch a stage of the arcade by its own, and then the same stage on the other 2 versions together. This is because the arcade version has a very different enemy formation and boss patterns, since the game never stops scrolling. In fact, the background repeats after around the middle of the second loop, which means that the backgrounds and the ground enemies may change depending on where the scrolling background is. Before we start, we should point out some differences in gameplay between the arcade and its ports. In terms of the power-ups, the MSX version also features a black bell, which destroys the ship if touched, and the Famicom version doesn't have a green bell. The power-up for the shadow ships is a red and white flashing bell. While for MSX you can combine the shadows and the barrier, nothing happens in the Famicom. For the tri-shot, the power-up is a candy icon for both ports. And ground enemies can also drop a bottle that gives the player a 1-up. Finally, an important part of the gameplay for the arcade was that if you get hit by a bullet, you lose a ship's arm from the side the projectile came from, which halves the number of bombs you can drop. If you lose both, an ambulance appears and, upon touching it, the arms regenerate. Lose the arms again and the ambulance won't return, unless you lose a life and the cycle repeats. For the ports, 1 bullet destroys both arms, and then the ambulance appears, which means that if you get hit after the ambulance's appearance, you can't drop bombs anymore until you lose a life. The most preferred method for beating this game in all 3 ports is to ignore the shadow power-up and stick to the barrier and the tri-shot, getting a new barrier power-up as soon as the first one is lost. Losing a whole life and getting all powers stripped out is a bad trade in this game, especially on later stages where the recovery is really hard, which later became a Konami shoot 'em up staple. With all of this cleared up, let's start the game. Game starts easy, with only a handful of enemies formations that won't shoot for now. We should focus on powering up our ship first, but the first clouds are usually empty. Around this part, clouds start dropping bells. Get the silver one for the double shot. Now carefully take care of the now shooting enemies, and keep shooting clouds for the next colored bell, the blue one, for a speed up. Only one speed up is still a bit too slow now, so try to get another blue one before other power-ups. We will skip the green one and aim for a red bell to get the barrier. Getting this bell spawns a barrage of egg-like enemies that fill up the screen. Carefully destroy as many as you can and dodge them. For the rest of the level, enemies aren't very aggressive. Just remember to take care of ground enemies to avoid more bullets on screen. The screen dims and the first general appears as the game chants its name.
Onion head.
Shoot it from the middle while avoiding the erratic bullets that come out of its circle barrier. This will be enough for a quick kill. The home ports start really slow, so we should also start by powering up slowly. In these versions, the blue speed up bells comes first. Make sure to also destroy every ground target on the MSX for this stage. Make another bell appear to go straight to the white bell, the double shot, right away. Make a third bell appear and keep shooting it past the shadow power up and straight to the red bell for the barrier. The egg enemies appear here too after getting the shield, so dodge them and kill them carefully. We can now focus on getting the second blue bell speed up power up. The candy power-up appears here for the Famicom, which makes the enemies a lot easier, but for MSX we have to wait until the last ground enemy. As you can see, the MSX has these red club enemies that appear from the sides and fly towards the ship. These appear all game long in this version. This last tree holds the candy for the tri-shot, which is almost mandatory for the first boss. Onion Head has an easy pattern on the home ports, but you have to be just in front of him to hurt him. Without the triple shot, the boss fights can get really long, even for the first boss, but after a short fight shooting and dodging he will fall. Enemies are faster now, but their numbers are still low. Keep calm and kill them as they come. At this point, ground enemies will drop the star icon. This serves as a screen clear bomb. Following the star, ground enemies will drop the bell icon. Grab it now to ensure the very useful tri-shot. Enemies now come from all directions instead of a single file, so this power-up serves to take care of them. Keep dropping bombs on ground enemies. There is no visual crosshair like Xevious, but bombs auto-aim to the nearest target when the button is pressed. After the star appears again, the next ground power-up will be another bell. Grab it to summon the Might Baseball. The second boss comes now, the difficult General
Parallel stick.
strategy here that works every time if you have a barrier. Just to tank the damage of the boss, which will insta-kill it. The game is in the zone now. Many types of enemies come from above, and they get faster. The ground appears with more shooting targets. As you can see, the enemies are more varied in the console ports, especially the ground ones. The star item appears on the ground same as the arcade version, but no baseball in these home ports. Even if the scrolling looks very choppy on the MSX, once you get into the game you really start to forget about it, since the ship's movement is what matters. Of course, it would be better without the chopped scrolling. Soon after, parallel dish appears from above instead of the ground, so no cheese here. The strategy is to shoot it and dodge the white enemies, ignoring the green ones. He has gone really fast. Things start to get more frantic in this level, but for now it starts easy. Take care of the simple enemies' formations. The crab enemy line is best to be taken care of from the bottom to avoid them flooding the screen. Keep dropping bomb on ground enemies as soon as they appear, and do your best to not let the bells get in the way of your shots. After more quick enemies formations, the octopus enemies follow. Kill them as quickly as you see them, since they can start bouncing everywhere. The baseball power-up is very useful here to keep the screen less crowded. The elephants follow now. Shoot them and dodge the ones that escape your fire. After another octopus formation, the spinning spiked clubs follow. Just dodge them carefully and be careful of losing the barrier to them. Stage 3 General is next.
Tiger Garden.
Keep your distance and stay low, since it won't come down all the way. Dodge the bullets left to right and keep shooting until it dies. The volcano stage begins with fast waves of enemies that come from above. But soon, the single files of crabs appear. Try to shoot them all from below, changing from left to right as it is necessary. As you probably noticed, the MSX version is harder than the Famicom version. I'd say it resembles the difficulty of the second loop of the Famicom, so it is expected to lose the barrier around this mark. Try to survive and juggle the bells until you can safely get the red bell again. Meanwhile, the pattern of the enemies gets harder. The hand-ground enemy appears in the MSX version now, so be sure to kill it quickly. The stage repeats its pattern twice, with the same crabs and octopus as before. Remember to pay attention to the egg enemies when getting the red bell for the new barrier. After all that, the spinning clubs from the arcade are missing, so the boss follows. The easiest boss, dodge the green minions and bullets and shoot the boss head on, since he will never reach the low part of the screen. Just keep dodging from side to side. After the first wave of aggressive enemies, we are introduced to a combination of jumping enemies that come from the sides and ground targets. These new flying enemies can crowd the screen with bullets that, paired with their erratic movements, can result in a deadly area if not for the trusty tri-shot. Since we are starting to lose barrier, we can take a couple of bullets on purpose in this part to grab a new one. Keep the bells up ready to make a red one appear to renew the shield. Remember to quickly kill the egg enemies before they get too low on the screen. If you get a new barrier in this part, it should be enough for the rest of the loop. The next waves of enemies can be taken care of quickly since they all come from above, repeating their simple patterns. The enemies that come from the sides from before soon join, but it is nothing that can't be controlled. The fourth general soon follows.
Road device.
Same as Onion Head before him, Claw Device is surrounded by a rotating enemy shield. Keep shooting and dodging the attacks while keeping in mind that he can quickly move across the screen and appear from the other side, but you will always stay at the screen high part, so you can keep going at it from below. Remember to eliminate the ground targets so they don't create unwanted bullets in the screen. The stage begins with this onion-looking enemy, and here we need to pause for a disclaimer. Stage 4 on the Famicom version is supposed to look like this, but it has come to our attention that many ROMs of the game online present on many ROM packs, including those on archive.org, seem to have a corrupt version of Stage 4 and 5. This corrupted version found its to even prestigious channels that document Famicom games, and there are even some comments stating that the real cartridge looks like that, which is completely false. So keep this in mind that if you play a ROM of the game. Continuing with the real Stage 4, the aggressiveness of the enemies reaches its peak on the MSX version, especially with the enemies that come from the sides. The ground units are harder on the Famicom, with the now appearance of the hand enemy kicking off the bullet hell portion of the game. Soon after the scissors, enemies appear on the Famicom, shooting an insane amount of bullets and staying on the very top of the screen. The tri-shot can quickly dispose of it. They are easier on the MSX when they appeared before in the level. The dodging and shooting aspect of the game becomes heavy here. This will take practice. I don't think it can be achieved in the first playthroughs, but once muscle memory kicks in, the game becomes very doable. Claw device follows now. Just watch out for the bullets and keep shooting with he is in front of the ship. This a very long stage compared to the rest of the game. After a now usual flying enemies pattern, they start to become faster, and more ground targets appear to create a deadly combination. This horizontal scrolling enemies appear now. They are static for now, so shoot them or dodge them carefully. After this arrangement of ground enemies, these enemies come from above. Kill them quickly before they start to spin in circles, crowding the screen. More scrolling enemies appear, but now we'll start shooting and moving in complex circular patterns. These bouncing flying units follow. They can very quickly fill the screen, so it is necessary to destroy them as soon as they appear. Scrolling waves come from the side, forcing the ship to maneuver at the same time as shooting down the new fast enemies, including these bouncing octopuses and the diagonally flying eyes. Needless to say, the baseball power-up is a great ally. After all that, there's a quick break with this pencil sharpener looking units that bounce around. And lighting bulbs with a very similar pattern. Even more new enemies will join, but again, since they come from above and there are no ground enemies, it is pretty easy with the tri-shot. When land appears, the site is crowded with ground targets. Take them out fast and soon after the barrier will disappear, always, before facing the game final boss.
Right king button.
The King Spice will move in a big circle dropping big blue enemies, so I advise shooting him when he comes down and move aside to wait for the next spin. Keep in mind to destroy the ground enemies as they appear too. Soon after the king will fall. The last stage on the home ports is twice as long as the other levels before it. It starts with this horizontal scrolling enemies that will shoot at you and do a circle pattern. Soon after the bouncing enemies appear, do your best to avoid the screen to get crowded. The Moai ground enemies also appear now. When you get to the runaway, the first thing is to kill the ground units and destroy the bouncing octopus quickly. All the enemies that appear later in the stage in the arcade appear together now in the runway, and they all bounce and stay for long if not shot down. After the runway hell, the pattern repeats, beginning with the scrolling enemies. Avoid them and destroy the Moais and hand ground targets to increase your chances. There's a high probability to lose the barrier on the Famicom run now, which is a very bad spot to do so. Losing a life here results on the complete loss of power-ups, and the enemies will not tone down the attacks on you, so recovery is almost impossible. But if you push through, you can reach the end of the level. We almost lose everything on the MSX too. This shows you how hard the last stage was on home ports. King Spice is all that is left now. The pattern is the same, but a lot faster on the MSX. Without the correct amount of speed-ups in a single shot, the fights drags on for quite a bit, but once you get the pattern down, you can beat it even with the base ship. Congratulations! The game is done, and now it loops with a harder difficulty. No ending to enjoy, but rest assured you just saved on Buri Island from King Spice tyranny. The cute 'em up genre kept on evolving side by side with the rest of the shoot 'em up games that started to populate the market, but the certain revolution for shooters in general came with the other Konami title that came out that same year. Thanks for watching until the end. We strongly recommend GTV's video on the whole Twinbee franchise for a more comprehensive look on the series. You should now know what's next.